Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a brand new episode of Wrestling with Awareness. I'm your host, Vikram Prashar, and today I have a very special guest with us today. He's a professional wrestler for Ring of Honor. He's a WWE 24/7 champion, an Impact Wrestling X Division champion, a Ring of Honor World Tag Team champion, and he's an Honor Rumble winner. Today we are going to wrestle the mind with Mike Bennett. How are you doing today, Mike?
I'm good, dude. It's always funny when people start listing off things I've done. I never think about any of my accomplishments. I'm always so quick to be like, all right, what's next? What do I got to do next? It's always kind of cool and kind of humbling to hear some of the stuff I've done. But I'm good. I'm cold, as you can tell by this giant sweatshirt I have, but I'm pushing through. So I'm good. But thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, man. And I can definitely relate to you on the coldness there because I'm in Canada and it's January. So, man, it is super cold right now. And speaking of January, this is probably going to drop in February. But so we're about a month into 2020. And something I've been beginning my interviews with that I think I want to continue doing is something that I feel we really need when it comes to inner happiness and peace, and that's gratitude. So although 2020 was a crazy year, what are some things that came out of it that you're grateful for?
You know, I'm a firm believer in trying to find silver linings in bad times, in hard times, in difficult times. And so, 2020 was a stressful year for me and my family. We both lost our jobs and trying to figure out what the wrestling world was going to look like and try to navigate through that, trying to save money, trying to figure out what we're going to do. But while doing all that, I got to spend an enormous amount of time with my kids, time that I never would have gotten had this pandemic never had happened, because I would have been on the road with WWE. So I had a brand new son in February of 2020. So I got to spend all that time with him that I didn't get with my daughter, because when my daughter was born, she was born the week of WrestleMania. So I literally was in the hospital with my wife. We had the baby, or she had the baby. I didn't do anything. She did all the work. God love her. I was in the hospital not even 24 hours after my daughter was born. And then I had to catch a flight to go to New Orleans so I could be there for WrestleMania week. But with the pandemic happening, my son was born, then we got fired. So I got all this time to spend with my son, and I got to see those phases. I got to see him hit those milestones and those phases that I didn't necessarily get with Freddie. But I also got to bond with her, which has been a lot of fun, because she's a daddy's girl, and I'm 100% wrapped around her finger.
Man, absolutely. And that's great to hear that you've been getting a lot of sentimental value out of the past year or so as a father, because I think a lot of professional wrestlers miss out on that opportunity. And I think that was definitely the silver lining when it came to you within the last year. And within the last year, you have made what you call a Mike Bennett redemption tour. You have been on a roll, having great matches with Nick Aldis. You returned to Ring of Honor. And Ring of Honor is one of those companies that has kind of carried professional wrestling fans through this pandemic and through these crazy times. So in 2021, what would you say your goal is? Like, do you have your eyes set on Rush and the World Championship? Do you have your eyes set on that World Tag Team Championship? What do you think you want to do?
So for me as a person, my goal through 2021 and through the rest of my career is to just wrestle and appreciate where I'm at, appreciate what I get to do. I spent so much of my career trying to get to, and this isn't a knock on WWE. My whole career was trying to get to WWE. I grew up a WWE fan. It's what I wanted to do. So I think I was slightly tunnel visioned and short sighted, in the sense that I may not have been appreciative of other things that I was doing or other companies that I was working for, because that tunnel vision was, this is where you have to go, this is what you have to do. Now that I've been fired and I've realized that I don't want to go back there and it's not the wrestling I like, it's kind of opened up my eyes to be like, I just enjoy professional wrestling, and I'm going to enjoy every match, every segment, every promo, every company that I work for, and I'm going to try to get the most out of it without this burden of, oh, well, that ruined my chances to go here, or well, that ruined my chances of getting signed here. No, my main focus is going to be 100% on just enjoying where I'm at the moment and really just soaking it all in. But as a professional, I'd be lying if I said I want to be Ring of Honor World Champ. I want to be IWGP World Champ. I want to do it all. I want to go back to New Japan. My mindset right now is so entirely different than it used to be. I want people to look at me and the first thing they think is wrestler. For the longest time, I was like, I want people to look at me as a sports entertainer because that's what WWE wants. And now I've fallen back in love with the actual sport of professional wrestling. So my whole goal now is to just try to change this perception of what people think of me as. I want people to look at me and go, that's a wrestler. He's a wrestler. I'm trying to break it down to just the basics and the brass and remind people that professional wrestling, just as a sport, can still be really entertaining.
I couldn't agree more, especially as a professional wrestler in training who's going to be entering the sport very soon. Like, I would love to go to WWE, but I'd also love AEW, Ring of Honor, Impact, so many places. And I think that's the beautiful thing about professional wrestling this generation is that I'm not saying it's exactly like the territory days, but it's kind of similar because we have all these companies coming up and we're all getting higher in popularity. And I think a lot of guys who are coming into the sport these days are definitely having their eyes on multiple companies and would love to work for multiple places for sure.
It's definitely the best it's ever been. When I started in 2001, the independents in wrestling were crap. Like, you were almost looked down on if you came in through the independents. But that was just that was kind of the culture that WWE set, where it was like, oh, the independents are these outlawed bush leagues when they really weren't. But now with all these companies, and I think social media is a lot to blame for it, because you can get these matches out to mass amounts of people. You can get these matches out at scale to all these people. And in that process, we've begun to see all these companies pop up. You've saw, like, WWE's always been there, but New Japan is more popular here than it's ever been. Ring of Honor not only is shown all over Sinclair Broadcasting, but they have YouTube channels and their Facebook and their Twitter and their Instagram, and it's just constant content of all the old matches that some people probably didn't even know that CM Punk was in Ring of Honor, or Daniel Bryan, or Kevin Owens, or all these guys that are now at WWE. So you can now go there and you might be like, oh, well, now I'm going to tune in and watch Ring of Honor. And of course you got AEW on TNT, which I think you're in a very great position as a wrestler who's just up and coming, because there's all these places to go. You don't have to just be like, well, one company's the top of the mountain. It's just not the case anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, not only are all these newer companies or companies who have been around for a while, like Ring of Honor, getting more popular, but you can make a living off wrestling outside of the WWE now, which I find incredible. It just makes it better for every single athlete pursuing professional wrestling. Yeah. So speaking of AEW, because we did touch on them a little bit, they're on TNT. Ring of Honor has some amazing talent like yourself, the Briscoes, Flip Gordon. And AEW World Champion Kenny Omega has recently stepped into the Impact Zone with the Good Brothers, and he's referring to himself as the belt collector right now. Now, does this mean he wants the Impact title? Does this mean he wants the ROH title, IWGP? Who knows? But if the cleaner was to step into Ring of Honor, would you want a piece of him, and what message would you give to him if he's watching this right now?
Well, first and foremost, Kenny's one of the most gifted professional wrestlers I think I've ever seen. He's had some of the greatest matches I've ever witnessed with Okada, and his work over in New Japan, I think, speaks for itself, the things he's done in the Bullet Club. But I personally would love to wrestle him. I've never gotten in the ring with him. I would have a blast. I think the world of his talent. And if he's paying attention, please come to Ring of Honor. I'm a huge proponent of jumping to different companies. I'm a huge proponent of all us working together, because I'll spoiler alert. The only reason why companies don't is because of egos, because we all can't just figure out how, like, in this sport where it's predetermined we can't get past our own egos to be like, well, I don't want to lose and I don't want this guy to win, as opposed to being like, no, this moment could be really friggin' cool for professional wrestling. And to think of the people who actually spend the money, which is the fans, that's what they want to see. So if we could just set our egos aside, and that's why I love seeing Kenny go to Impact and then seeing the Good Brothers jump over to AEW. I would love it if Ring of Honor started doing it. I would love to see me and Taven show up at AEW or me and Taven show up at Impact, because that's good for professional wrestling, because me and Taven will put our egos aside. I know the Good Brothers will put their egos aside. Like, we understand what makes good professional wrestling. And I'm a wrestling fan at heart. I've always been a wrestling fan at heart. And when I see the possibility that guys could, oh my God, Kenny Omega could show up at Ring of Honor, or the Kingdom could show up at AEW, that excites me as a wrestling fan, not just as a wrestler, but as a fan. I'm like, think of the possibilities. Or maybe once a year we just have a big show where all the wrestling companies, I mean, excluded WWE because I don't see them ever doing it, but if you think like New Japan and AEW and Impact and Ring of Honor once a year come together for this massive collaborative show of crossing promotions, like, it's so I get goosebumps thinking about it as a fan. And then as a wrestler, I'm like, oh, that would just be the coolest thing ever. But yeah, I think what AEW and Impact are doing right now is really cool, and I think it's good for professional wrestling. And I'm happy to see people put their egos aside for the better of professional wrestling. If we want the sport to evolve, if we want the business to evolve, if we want there no longer to just be a monarchy at the top of the wrestling industry, we have to be able to do this. We have to expand, and we have to start thinking outside the box.
I couldn't agree more. That's like the perfect mindset to have on this. And when you really think about it, because back in 2017, 2016, even New Japan, Ring of Honor, everything was very, very popular. But what made it even more popular, I'd say, is the initial All-In event when we finally combined all our leagues and we had this huge, massive show. And it showed the world that, like, outside of WWE, we can do this. No knock on WWE because they're amazing, but professional wrestling itself, the sport itself, that has to be the top priority, not one company.
And I feel like wrestling thrives when there's competition, and AEW has made WWE work harder. It's made it think about what it's doing. It just has. That's the way it is. Guys are no longer saying, I'll go to WWE. I've talked to, when I got fired and I started doing indies and was going out to LA to do UWN, talking to a lot of the younger guys, they were telling me they said, I would rather go to AEW. But that's good for wrestling. Again, that's not a knock on WWE. That is good for professional wrestling. It means there's competition. It means there's places for me and you to go work. There's places for my friends to support their families, which is huge for me. And as a whole, it's just really good for professional wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I couldn't agree more. And we've spoken on professional wrestling itself for quite a while. For professional wrestlers like me who are currently training, or people who are planning on training, entering the business, like, what advice would you give to people who are entering the business at this time, at this precious time where it's probably better than it was a long time ago to enter the sport?
God, man, there's so much that I could say to someone. Don't stop having fun with it. We're professional wrestlers for a living. I have to take a step back sometimes and remind myself, like, you get to be a pro wrestler for a living. Like, the way I support my family is a pro wrestler. Like, I'm a superhero character. That's what my job is. And that's really cool at the end of the day. Like, there's a lot of people that hate their jobs. I love my job. So I try to tell people, never forget why you became a pro wrestler, because we get caught up in everything. And I'd also tell people, be cautious about people you take advice from. There's a lot of snakes in professional wrestling, which what I'm happy about is I feel like my generation, the generation after me, the guys they're tending to push out that political BS of pro wrestling. This, you got to be a real man. You got to do this. You got to follow these rules. And we're like, no, we're all just going to work together, because at the end of the day, you only have good matches if we all work together, and we all have to support each other, and we all have to pick each other up. Something else I would tell people is there's a lot of traditions and rules in professional wrestling that are essentially just BS and used to hold people down. So that's why I say just be careful about who you take advice from. Be careful about who you're listening to. Look at someone, follow them on social media, look at their success, and then ask yourself, is that someone I want to emulate? Or is that someone that is successful, but I don't really like how they got there? We're in a very lucky time right now where we can kind of dig into people. Like if people like, oh, I like the message Mike is sending and stuff like this, they can go to my social media and they can essentially see if I'm full of it. And if they don't, if they like what they see, then they can be like, all right, that's the guy I want to follow. But I would tell guys and girls, be careful about who you follow. But there's a lot of good men and women out there that are pushing a good message, that want to support each other, and just support each other. I'm so sick of the backstabbing in wrestling that I'm glad is kind of moving out. But like for so long it's been there, and it's nice to see that most guys are starting to say it doesn't have to be this way and we can dictate and change it. So just keep your head on your shoulders, have fun, and just be careful who you take advice from.
Yeah, absolutely. That is some excellent advice. Thank you so much for that. And you brought up like the moniker of like being a real man and kind of pushing out some of the old wrestling traditions out there. One of the most greatest people to look up to, one of the most excellent performers of all time, was recently on Joe Rogan's podcast. So no knock on The Undertaker, because one of the greatest of all time. But he did say something that some people found rather controversial, referring to the WWE today and possibly professional wrestling in general as like soft, not the sport itself, but the wrestlers. What are your thoughts on that?
So first and foremost, I have the utmost respect for Undertaker. I've always have. He was one of my favorites growing up. He was nothing but kind to me anytime I interact. I didn't interact with him a lot at WWE, but every time I did, he was great. My issue is his problems seem to come at the talent and say that it was their fault that the product is soft. I can promise you that the talent has zero input on the product that gets put out. They get told what to do. If they go off script, they get yelled at or they get punished. It's not the talent. The talent has always been ready and willing to do whatever is asked of them. And most of the talent have had far more success on the independents doing what they normally do than when they get to WWE and they get watered down and they get told to do this or do that and do this. I understand where Undertaker's coming from. It's just, from what I see it as, is it's just a generation gap. It's a difference. We, as the professional wrestlers of my generation, we tend to look out for each other. We have each other's backs. We understand when the company's trying to screw us or not screw us or this and that. And I don't think the guys are soft. I mean, not for nothing, but some of the matches these guys have, I don't think the guys back then could keep up. And I don't think they could get hit as hard. And I don't think they could handle it, because some of these matches that you see in New Japan or you see in Ring of Honor or you see in AEW, some of these matches you see like Eddie Kingston have, like these guys are beating the crap out of each other because they are tough. And I don't think the guys are soft. And like my wife is very close with Michelle McCool, and having that interaction there, I don't think Undertaker was trying to be disrespectful. I think it's just a generational thing. I think it's this mindset of, well, this is the way we did it. They're not doing it this way, so it must be wrong, as opposed to someone like Mick Foley, who's adapting and understanding the way professional wrestling is evolving, or someone like Edge, who's helped out so many of the younger guys and understands where wrestling is evolving. So I don't think it was a disrespect thing from Undertaker. I just think it was a generational gap in not understanding this generation of professional wrestlers.
I couldn't agree more. I think you put it in the best words possible, because Undertaker's a legend, and he's also simply just looking out for the younger guys. It's just the generational gap there, where there's going to be some disagreements within there, but his intentions are for the better. And people who are like, yeah.
I also think there's a sense of, when I was there, the level of respect that the talent has for that guy is ridiculous. Like, he's the Godfather. He walks in, it parts like the Red Sea. And sometimes I wish some of these veterans would understand that when they do down talk some of the younger generations, we idolized them. We loved them. We admired them. We just, everything about them we wanted to be. So when I think there's the wind gets sucked out of your sail when you hear someone that you respect so much kind of crap on you, when you're just like, all I've ever wanted to do was do what you do because we respect you so much. And so it's hard for me to see all these guys respect him and then have him turn around and say, oh, well, they're all soft. That's why I don't necessarily think it was a disrespect thing, because he understands how much the guys respect him. He knows how those guys look up to him. It'd be impossible not to when you're around him and see how it is. So I just honestly think, like I said, every generation is going to see it. Wrestling evolves. Old generation talks about how they're wrong. But what you have to do is you have to adapt. You have to talk to these guys, because wrestling is going to continue to evolve and continue to adapt. You can either understand it, or you can say, well, when we did it, this is how well, cool. That worked back then. Also, in the 70s and 80s, they thought wrestling was real. So we can't always just go back to what worked back then, because it's not the same dynamic. Social media is there. We can now literally, I can sit here, you're in Canada, I can talk to you from Chicago, like face to face in real time, just like that. It's an entirely different world. And that's why I think it's so important for guys who, like Mick Foley came out and said something about it, and Edge is constantly doing things for the younger generation. And it's like, these guys that evolve, I think, set the example of what you need to do as you get older in this industry, and you help out, you reach your hand down and pick people up on your way. They're kind of, they've been to the mountain, the peak of the mountain. Now reach your hand down and help the next guy up.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more. All the intentions are for the better on both sides. The younger guys respect Taker so much, including myself, who's just entering the business. And then he just wants the best for the business, and he respects the younger guys. It was just a little toss-up of words from two generations, but overall, the intentions are positive on both sides. Absolutely. So moving on a little bit from professional wrestling, because on Wrestling with Awareness, mental health has always been a topic of discussion. So if you're comfortable with sharing, have you ever struggled with your mental health, and what advice would you give to people who are listening that could be struggling?
Yeah, I think mental health is an issue that we don't talk about nearly enough. And it's clearly an epidemic in this country where it affects so many people, and we don't even realize it, because it blows my mind that in 2021 it's still taboo to talk about mental health. And considering all the things we knew, and we know, we're learning, we're still finding out. And as someone who has struggled with mental health, I still do. I struggle with depression. I struggle with anxiety. I have OCD, and that all led to my addiction to painkillers. Because eventually, when you are constantly dealing with your mental health and you don't have an outlet, or you don't know where to go, you just try to numb it. And so that's what I did. I was constantly trying to numb my insecurities, my anxiety, my depression, my OCD. I was constantly just trying to shut it down. And it worked. So for a certain period of time, I felt great. Didn't even think about it. Painkillers did the trick. But the thing that happens with drugs is they tend to take your mental health problems and they explode them. Because once you start coming down off the drugs, your brain is now moving 1,000,000 miles an hour. So you start taking more drugs, you start ruining your life that way, and your mental health just starts to spiral out of control. So for me, what I needed to do was realize that my addiction wasn't the issue. My mental health was the issue. The addiction was just a symptom. The addiction was the symptom of what the problem was, which was my mental health, my depression, insecurities, OCD, anxiety, and never coming face to face. I would always try to push it to the side, mask it, numb it. But I realized I had to go head on. I had to face it head on. I had to stop saying, oh, I'll worry about it tomorrow, or it's not really a problem. I had to tell myself, no, you have mental health problems that you need to work on. And I think also it's difficult in the industry you're in, where you're constantly in the spotlight. You're constantly being surrounded by people. You're constantly going up and down and up and down, feeling good, feeling bad, going on social media, having people criticize you, having people say the most vile, disgusting stuff about you or your family, the death threats, the phone calls me and my wife get. Like, it's this constant struggle of trying to deal with it through there and trying to hide it because you're like, I can't talk about that. I'm in an industry where it's taboo to talk about. So I had to come full circle with all those and make a realization that you can either admit this and go full steam and try to conquer this, or you can just keep masking it, which will probably lead to another drug addiction or lead to something worse. So it's like, I think this is something that we need to continuously talk about. I think this podcast is a fantastic idea. I applaud you for doing it.
Thank you.
I think we need to have more people that have a spotlight on them or have a fan base continue, because the entertainment industry is just, it's completely filled with people that have mental health problems. It just is. And for some reason we mask it, or for some reason we try to hide it because it makes us less than, or when in reality it just makes us human like everyone else. So I think it's important to use your platform, to use your voice, to speak about these things, because for me, it helps when I see someone else that I look up to be like, yeah, I suffer from depression. I'm like, thank you, I'm not alone. Or when I struggle with my drug addiction, to have someone like Road Dogg reach out to me and be like, hey, if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here. Or have someone like Goldust reach out to me and be like, hey, if you ever want to just chat about this, or you ever need I'm right here to talk to you. Like, having people you look up to, you respect and you admire, know that they go through these struggles too, can help enormously. And so I think it's very important that we continue to spread this message and continue to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And yeah, that's one reason why I made this podcast, because you explained how we're in an industry where it's kind of like taboo to talk about mental health. I feel like as someone coming into the business, like, professional wrestling is my number one passion. Another one of mine is mental health, because my mother has worked in the mental health field all her life. So I've grown up around people like that. I've struggled with my mental health myself. And I've always thought, I really enjoy wrestlers who keep the kayfabe alive. And when I entered the industry, I do want to do that, but I always want just that one outlet where I can talk about serious topics like this. And I think I found that through this podcast. But as you mentioned, you struggled with an addiction to opioid painkillers. And what was that journey to recovery like? And what advice would you give to people who are listening that are currently struggling with addiction?
It sounds so cliche, but there's a reason why it's cliche, and it's literally focus one day at a time. And I know, again, you've heard that from everyone, but if I can break it down in simpler terms, because someone broke it down for me before and it really made sense, because when you say one day at a time, people are like, yeah, okay, one day, but then what about the next day? What about 2 months from now? Or what? But if you literally break down what you're going through at that moment, because so much of our mental health and so much of our addiction comes from what's going on in our brain at that moment, at that particular time. And we try to fix it at that moment, at that particular time. And we think, well, if we do this or we numb it this, then it'll go away. And tomorrow I'll feel better, or in an hour. And it doesn't work that way, because yes, you'll feel better once you numb it. But then it's going to come back, and it's going to come back, and it's going to come back. And with addiction, I always tell people it's like this. If you're craving something, or you're feeling like, I don't think I can get through this, you literally sit there and tell yourself, okay, just get yourself till bedtime. Get yourself till bedtime, then you'll go to sleep. You'll wake up, and tomorrow's a new day. Then when you wake up the next day, just say to yourself, all right, just if that craving hits, or that insecurity hits, or that depression, get myself till bedtime. I can do that. That's easy. Get myself till bedtime. Because then I'll go to sleep and I'll wake up and it's a new day. And what you tend to realize is these things snowball. Is one day it's get yourself to bedtime. The next day, get yourself to bedtime. The next day, you might not even think about it. You might just be like, all right, I woke up and I feel good. And then you continue through that day. And then maybe at noontime, it hits you again. All right, it's noontime. What time do I go to bed? 9 o'clock. All right, get yourself till 9 o'clock. Get yourself till 9 o'clock. Then the next day you wake up and it's a new day, and maybe you go 2 or 3 days without thinking about it. These things do have a way of snowballing and leading to better things. That's why they always say better days are ahead of you. You just have to continuously focus and tell yourself, if I can get through this day, then I can fix it and keep going and keep moving and keep progressing forward. But once you start to be like, oh my God, I got to get a week clean and a month clean and 10 months clean, it's overwhelming, and you really can't focus. But I would tell people, try to focus on that one day at a time. If you can have a support system, lean on your support system. They're there for a reason. I was blessed. I had my wife who, God love her. Like, I don't think I could have done it without her. She was there. As soon as I admitted I had a problem, she took my phone, she took my keys, she took my wallet. She's like, we're staying here, and this is how we're doing it. And I went, all right, that's how we're doing it. I could lean on her. I could lean on my mom and my dad and my sister and my brothers. And if you have that, some people aren't lucky enough to have that support system. And that's why, like we were talking about before, it's important for me to send my message. I try to tell people who reach out to me, I do the best I can, but I follow them on Twitter and I say, DM me. Because sometimes it's nice just to DM someone and be like, dude, I'm really struggling, and have someone write back, you can get through this. And then you say to yourself, yes, I can get through it. It's this whole community. And like, if you can have a community, or you can look at someone, or you can reach out to someone, that is so impactful. And you know, I've realized that as I get older, that it's more important to me to have an impact on people's personal lives as recovering addicts or as people that suffer from mental health than it will ever be for what I do in wrestling. Because wrestling at the end of the day is entertainment, and it makes people happy, it makes people angry, and it makes people sad. But if I can have a direct effect on how someone lives their life for the better, then that's like, I've done my job. That's a good day's work right there. And I would rather that than anything that wrestling world could bring.
Man, I couldn't agree more. And that's a very great way to put it. And like, you know, you're a very successful individual, both in professional wrestling and as a person, battling through your struggles with mental health, addiction. Then as far as you've come in pro wrestling at the same time, you're very successful. So how does Mike Bennett keep a positive and healthy mindset and stay motivated?
You know, it's just, I know I'm just constantly a work in progress. And I think we need to remind people that we're all just a work in progress. We're always searching for perfection, and it doesn't exist. It's not real. It's a made up stigma. And for some reason, it's infected us, this entire world, that if you're having a down day, then that means you're lazy and you're a piece of crap and this and that. It doesn't. It just means you're having a down day, and it's okay to have a down day. I constantly do self-reflection. I constantly, before I go to bed, I sound like a Buddha, but I constantly self-reflect on what I did. How could I have done it better? Did I handle that situation? I also try to catch myself. If I'm having a bad day and I start getting angry about it, I start to catch myself and say, stop, fix this. Don't go that path. Because you're constantly coming to the fork in the road. We can go down the negative path, or we can go down the positive path. Now, I'm not saying it works every time, but 8 times out of 10, 80% is better than 20%, is better than 40%. If I can get myself to 80% of the time taking the positive road as opposed to the negative road, then and it's all consistency. It's all consistency. And I think that's such a hard thing for people to understand, because we're in it must happen now type of society. You can get whatever. You can order stuff online right now. You can pick up your phone, get instant gratification right now. And understanding that fixing your mental health, fixing your addiction, dealing with your your depression, it's a consistent effort. It's progress. You have to slowly build that. It's like retraining your brain. You go to the gym, you don't work out once and have muscles all of a sudden. It just doesn't work that way. You have to go years and years and years, and you have to stay consistent at it or they go away. So I try to tell people, work on your mental health daily. Talk to yourself. Self-reflection, meditate, talk to people, be open, hold yourself accountable. That's another big thing. People don't hold themselves accountable anymore. Why? Because we're searching for this made up idea of perfection, which doesn't exist, because everyone thinks this idea that if I hold myself accountable, that means I was wrong. And if you're wrong, you can't be perfect. Well, if you can't be perfect, first of all, but if you're never wrong, how do you ever get better? And if you never admit that you're wrong, how do you learn how to get better? There's just so many people are just so afraid of accountability. For me, accountability changed my life. Once I started admitting that I was wrong, once I started not really wanting to be right about anything, because in my head, if I'm wrong, that means I can learn something new, which is always cool in my eyes. I always look at, if I write something on Twitter about, I think this, and someone comes back at me and goes, well, I did this, and this is why I know you're wrong. My first reaction isn't, screw you, you piece of crap. My first reaction is, oh, okay. I didn't think. I'm constantly doing that with my wife. I'll say something to her. We'll go back and forth. And then I'll go, oh, yeah, I'm wrong. Yeah, that's right. Because that's how you grow. That's how you learn. And being able to get to that point in your life, that has helped me with my addiction. And it's helped me huge with my mental health. It's just holding myself accountable.
Absolutely, man. Accountability, that's a great way to keep a healthy mindset and keep yourself in the swing of things. Very good mental health advice there, talking about your addiction, OCD, depression, anxiety. Really appreciate you coming forward about that stuff. Because especially wrestling fans in such a testosterone-driven industry, when they see their heroes and these larger-than-life figures come out about this stuff, it really helps them understand that they're truly not alone. And
I think that's
yeah.
important. And I think that's really important. I think it's important to tell people, even big, bad professional wrestlers suffer from, most of us do. Like that's the thing that always is, like, I think shocking to people is a lot of us are insecure. A lot of us deal with depression. A lot of us battle with trying to be liked and trying to find that level of perfection that just doesn't exist. So I'm not only trying to help people that look up to us, I want to be a voice for the wrestling community in general, to be like, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay. That makes you courageous. If you're able to go out there and put yourself on the ledge and say, these are my issues, I want to get better, let's talk about it. I don't know. To me, that's the most courageous you can be.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Especially coming out about something like mental health, which had a stigma against it. It's well needed, especially in these days when we have things like social media and we have so many avenues that could really bring a person down. We could use it just as much to bring somebody up. And that's what we should be doing. Absolutely.
Yeah, I wish social media was used more for lifting. That's what I've been trying to do with my social media, because you go on there and it's just cesspool of negativity. And I'm like, we have this amazing tool at our hands. I think back, if like you go back to like the 1800s and tell someone there will be a device one day where you can talk to anyone in the world at any time, and they'd sit there and go, yeah, imagine the things you can use it for. And we go, yeah, and we just use it to argue with people about their crappy opinions. And I'm like, that's not what it should be used for. And I understand that's how it spreads. Negativity spreads quicker than positivity. But I think if there's enough people, you can start a movement of being like, no, we're not going to put up with that. The wrestling community can tend to be very negative. We can change that because it got there. We can change it. We have the ability to. It's just being courageous and having just being brave enough to just go and say, all right, I'm going to be the first one. And then someone will follow suit, and then someone else will follow suit,
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And especially as somebody who's like, I'm 18 years old. I've just started training. So I've been a fan forever. And I grew up with social media while watching pro wrestling. So I've definitely been on both sides. I've been the guy who's been the negative fan. I've been every type of wrestling fan. I've debated with people online. But I don't know. Within the last 2 years or so, I've just felt like a totally changed person. Like I as a kid, I always looked up to John Cena. And I look at his Twitter as an example. While I have fun on Twitter, I give my wrestling opinions and stuff. Now I've also started just spreading a positive message, just spreading some words of advice every day, just starting to be a lot more positive about pro wrestling. Even now when I put out my opinions, I stay away from the negative opinions. If I have a negative opinion about something, I just don't even put it on social media. I just let all positivity come out, and any
And
fan can do that.
like as a fan too, like you were saying, healthy debate is fun. I mean, I enjoy debating sports. I put up a tweet the other day saying, I think Brady is more significant than Jordan was. And that's fun for me. That's fun to debate. Like, and people were coming at me like, oh, well, Brady never did this. And that's fun. That's healthy. That's what I would do with my buddies and my friends. And I also think debate is healthy in the sense of you learn things. That's why I said I'm never against someone debating with me and changing my mind. I want people to change my mind. Make me see it through your eyes. Why? Because I'm not you and you're not me. So the way you see it is never going to be the way I see it. But if you can show me a glimpse of how you see it, then I think that's helpful. And I think that helps people along the way. And I think we need more of that in this society. We need more people to understand that Black Lives Matter isn't a terrorist organization. They're trying to make people see through their eyes what they go through. And that's what, as me, a white male who grew up in, Massachusetts, doesn't know what it's like as a black male who grew up in the city of Cleveland. I just don't know it. But if you can help me see it, that helps us all. And I think if we just open our minds and be more accepting, and like I even in this crazy political climate, as crazy as things make me and as angry as I get, I always say, what is going on in that person's life? How can I better understand them? Because we always try to prove people wrong instead of just trying to understand them. And this world would be such a better place if we just went, we disagree. Why? Why do we disagree? Not I'm right and you're wrong. Tell me why we disagree. And I guarantee you, if people started to do that, we could easily find a mutual agreement somewhere.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's what we have to turn the world around to be. And I do think one day we will get there. It's going to take some time, but I think we will get there.
It's going to take your generation to keep like constantly saying, we're not going to put up with this crap. We're just not. Because like I said, just because things are tradition doesn't mean they are right. And that's what I've loved about my generation, your generation. If we started questioning everything, we started saying, well, it's always been done this way, but why? Why has it always been done this way? Let me understand. It doesn't need to be done this way. There's no reason that my friends of color don't have the equal rights I do. Why? Well, it's always been that way. Why? Can we fix it? Oh, well, it's too no, we can fix it. And that's what I love about my generation and your generation is we're questioning all this stuff. It might piss off the older people, but that's okay because I truly believe we're questioning it for the better.
I truly agree with you. I think that's the beautiful thing about your generation and my generation, that we're constantly changing, we're constantly evolving, we're listening to each other, and the world is just becoming a much more diverse and inclusive place, and it's absolutely beautiful to grow up through and witness. So yeah. And moving a little bit back to professional wrestling, you've had a 20 plus year career in the sport. You are like one of the best to do it, in my opinion. And when you came out of WWE and you, after that first match with Nick Aldis for the NWA World Championship, I saw a clip of you saying you were on a Mike Bennett redemption tour. So tell me a little bit about that.
So my redemption tour is kind of like, I put it out there, but it's more of a personal thing. It's more of proving to myself that I can be the professional wrestler that I want to be. Like I was saying earlier, it's not this idea of just trying to get to one company. It's now trying to prove to people that after 20 years of professional wrestling, being in this industry, sacrificing the things that I've had, having a drug addiction, overcoming it, now I'm starting to think about what my legacy is. Do I want to be remembered as Mike Kanellis, or do I want to be remembered as Mike Bennett, the guy that went to New Japan, the guy that was in Ring of Honor, the guy that went to Impact? And to me, the past 3 years didn't go the way I wanted them to. They just didn't. And to me, it's about regaining what I feel like I lost in those 3 years, regaining that confidence, regaining that courage, and essentially doing it my way, because I fell into that trap of, well, it's tradition, so you need to keep doing it this way. And this is the culture of professional wrestling, so you need to do it this way. And if you do that, you're not really a wrestler. And if you don't do this, then and instead saying, I've been doing this long enough. I've earned the respect. I've earned the stripes in this industry. I'm going to do it my way. And if you don't like it, I don't really care. Like, that's why I don't mind speaking up and saying to some of the older generation, hey, have some respect for these younger guys. If you want to help them, then help them. But talking down to them is not going to help them. Understanding them is going to help them. I'm truly on a mission to change this industry. I want it to be a better industry. I want it to be an industry of guys people can go and they can be proud of and not have to worry about sexual harassment or drugs or stupid political games or stuff like that. I want this industry to represent my values, what I stand for. And I'm kind of redeeming myself, but I also feel like I'm trying to redeem the whole industry, because there's a lot of young men and women that are coming up that I want them to look at the industry and be proud of it. And my wife's a big proponent of that too. She's been really fighting for the women in this industry and really pushing for them and saying, no, there's enough room at the top for all of us, men, women, everyone. And so my redemption tour is redeeming myself, but I also want to redeem this industry. I want to make it better than how I found it. When I leave, I want people to go, okay, I don't really care if they say, hey, he won this title, he won that title, and this. I want them to go, he had a really good effect, a really positive effect on this industry, and people remember that. Like, I keep thinking of my dear friend Brody Lee, and like you don't realize the effect some people have on this industry until, unfortunately, they're gone. And you look at someone like him, and his legacy in this industry will always be someone who made the industry better and made people around him, not in the, God rest his soul, but you don't realize the impact you have until, unfortunately, you're gone. And then I've never seen anything like what happened with Brody, where just the entire wrestling community felt like he was their best friend. And he clearly had an impact for the better on everyone he came in contact with. He definitely, with me, he made my job at sometimes WWE, which felt unbearable, bearable. He made it fun. We did European tours that felt like a slog, and he made them fun because we were teaming. He was just a good person. And I think at the end of the day, when we think about our legacy, we all should be more like Brody. I think at the end of the day, everyone needs to be more like Brody and less like the people that, care about their titles or their championships or whatnot. Care about the effect you have on other people.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that's a perfect place to wrap up the questions. But before I do let you go, I do like to play a quick game with all my guests before I let them go. So I'm going to list off 10 names, and you can use one word or sentence to describe each of them.
Oh, boy. All right, let's do it.
All right, so let's start off with Matt Taven.
He's my brother. He's my best friend in the entire world, and he's super talented. He's a main eventer in any company. I love him to death.
Nick Aldis.
Oh, man, a champ's champ. When you think of a champion, when you think of royalty, like to me, he's like wrestling royalty, and just because of the way he carries himself. He's fantastic. His wife is amazing. I love them both to death. But I think wrestling royalty when I think of him.
Absolutely. Adam Cole.
Oh, God. I love Adam. He, again, my brother, one of my best buddies. Our journey together is something that hopefully in time I can explain to people, how we both got signed to Ring of Honor together, did tryouts together. Another person was at my wedding. I just think incredibly highly of him, just so incredibly highly, as not just a wrestler, but as a human.
Absolutely. One of the best out there. The Briscoes.
One of the best tag teams in all of professional wrestling ever in the history of pro wrestling. Don't get the credit they deserve. Also, incredible family men, and two people that I look up to and admire immensely.
Couldn't agree more. The Young Bucks.
Oh, changed the industry. Changed the entire wrestling industry. Turned it on its head. And what's awesome about it, which I'm incredibly jealous of, is they did it their way. From the very beginning, they did it their way. And I admire the crap out of that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that as well. The Good Brothers.
Just two of the nicest humans you'll ever meet. Two of probably the two funniest people I know in my whole life. And again, these names, I've surrounded myself with just incredible people. They're so generous. Carl helped me get to New Japan. He's funny. He's just a great dude. Doc is the same way. Again, two people that I just love to death, and they've helped me out so much.
Absolutely. AJ Styles.
Probably one of, if not the best to ever do it.
Absolutely. Vincent.
Used to be my friend. Now he's a very insecure, confused man, which I feel for. But I hope he finds his path soon because he seems very confused.
The ROH World Champion Roosh.
Oh, man. I watched him and Brody King have a match at Final Battle, and I don't think I've ever watched two people hit each other harder than they hit each other. Terrifying, but also someone that I would love to get in the ring with and just beat the crap. Have just a match where we beat the crap out of each other. I think he is super talented, but I also think he hasn't even scratched the surface of what he's capable of, which is scary to me.
Yeah, absolutely. He's phenomenal. And last but not least, your wife, Maria Kanellis Bennett.
Oh, God. I got nothing to say. No, just she is the epitome of everything I want to be in this world. She's hardworking. She's caring. She gets things done. She doesn't put up with crap, but she's also willing to listen. And she's just a good human. I strive to be her every day. And there's a line in one of my favorite movies, As Good as It Gets, where the guy says, "You make me want to be a better man." And that is what she does every single day of my life. I wake up, I look at her, and I go, all right, I got to be better. I got to keep up with you because you are wonderful.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for joining me here. This interview ran for a while, so I really appreciate you hopping on and speaking, especially with that one minor technical difficulty towards the end. You stuck in, so I really appreciate that. Where can everybody find you on social media?
So just follow me on Twitter at @RealMikeBennett, and then on Instagram. I use Twitter and Instagram the most. Instagram at @TheRealMichaelBennett. Yeah, and then just watch Ring of Honor, man. They're putting out some really good content right now. If you like just professional wrestling, basic, pure, hard-hitting pro wrestling without the frill, without the crazy storylines, good, easy-to-follow storylines, and good professional wrestling, just watch Ring of Honor. You can find it on all the Sinclair broadcasting stations, or it's on Fight TV. It's on ROH Wrestling. You can watch it anywhere. Literally nowadays, you can watch it anywhere. Google Ring of Honor, and you'll be able to watch it. Please, I'm begging you, because it's the guys and girls right now are just, they're killing it. And I want people to see, not just for me. I want people to see what my friends are doing because they are absolutely killing it.
Yeah, ROH has been incredible. Thank you so much for joining me. Ladies and gentlemen, we have just wrestled the mind with Mike Bennett. Please like, comment, and hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next one.